All right, welcome everybody tonight to our first event for what we call at the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity in Henrico County Public Schools. We call this one of our events for our Cultural Heritage Month series. And what that is throughout the year, we celebrate and recognize just some of the population, student populations throughout the division. And we do that by offering materials to our staff throughout the schools about that specific group, that demographic of students, to highlight and recognize them, their presence, and their contributions to our community. And we also do that through some community events. So we have in-person events and we have virtual events. Tonight, we launch this year's series with our virtual event, recognizing Hispanic Heritage Month. Here in Henrico, we recognize it as Hispanic, Latin, Latino, Latina, Latinx Heritage Month. And this event today is going to have a concentration on the mental health of Hispanic and Latin students and families. As we'll go through, I'll introduce myself and I'll introduce the program a little bit and give some announcements. Here's a quick agenda for tonight, but before we start, if there are any people attending, if you need Spanish interpretation, if you can put it in the chat and let us know, we'll try to work some interpretation. Para nuestros miembros de la comunidad que están viendo hoy, si necesitan interpretación en español, por favor pongan un mensaje en el chat y vamos a intentar de a ser intérprete del programa lo más que podamos esta noche. For our agenda, I'll be going over, like I said, over our office, what we do, some of our announcements and updates, and then just giving a little bit of some numbers, some data related to the Hispanic Latin community here in Henrico and a little bit throughout Virginia. And then we'll have a presentation from one of our community programs, and that's the National Alliance of Mental Illness of Virginia, and they'll also be sharing information about their Youth Move Virginia program. And then we'll have another partner who is La Esperanza research program that is hosted out of the Virginia Commonwealth University. And then we'll turn it over to a quick panel Q&A and then end with some closing remarks. Just to give an overview of our department, like I said, the name of our department is the Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity Department here in Henrico County Public Schools. We are under the leadership of Dr. Monica Mans. She is the Chief of Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity Officer. She is on right now. I don't know, Dr. Mans, if you want to jump in and say hello real quick.
Hello. How is everyone doing? I just want to tell everyone, thank you all. Thank our presenters for coming out. I said it to them earlier, but thank you again. And thank all of our participants for being here to learn. Again, thank you, Deanna, for coordinating this. And so again, I'm excited about the information we're about to share, and I'm excited to push this out to our school staff as well, so that we can better support our Latino, our Latinx, and our Latino students.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great. I just want to make sure if in the chat, if y'all can just give me a quick little thumbs up or a yes, if you can see the presentation screen, if you can see our PowerPoint for tonight. I just want to make sure. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Once I get one person, we're good to go. All right. So we do so much in today's preparation for the presentation. It was a little bit difficult to kind of condense everything that we do in the EDO office, but it kind of picked out some of our biggest highlights that are currently happening right now. They're the most talked of right now. And this is, first of all, our CREM model, and it's actually our culturally responsive educational model. It's an educational framework that really helps both our teachers in the classroom, our staff throughout the building, basically everybody throughout the school division, to learn how to reduce prejudice, to build communities and spaces, learning environments, learning activities that are inclusive of all of our students and that highlight the diversity of our students and all the cultural context that they bring to the table. It is a lot of work. It is really difficult, and this slide does not do any justice to the work that we do. It includes training staff, but it also includes selecting very specific course material. And just a quick highlight that we're currently sharing with some of our elementary schools are some books that they can use for their instruction that show some of the different demographics of our students throughout the Henrico County Public Schools student population. If you would like to know more information or further details about the CREN model and parts of it, I do have our specialist, Tiffany Lewis, listed here. You can reach out to her and you can reach out to me, and we'll make sure that you are directed to the right person to answer your questions. Of course, one of our biggest goals in the center of the CREN model is creating a sense of belonging for all of our students and actually even for our staff. So we do have a current program that is open for taking applications, and that is our Equity Ambassadors group. And that is made up of student volunteers that have signed up, they have chosen to participate, and they are a representation of our schools, and they highlight all of the diversity that they bring to the schools. But not only that, they focus on equity issues that they see in their own school buildings, and then they figure out ways to address them or ideas, and they are a very integral part and an amazing group of students that participate in the EDO office. So if there are any students that are watching this, or any educators that can think of students that might be a great fit for this program or might be interested in learning more about the program, you can scan the QR code that is presented here on the slide. For our educators, not only have we this year launched a program for providing them actual college credit courses through Virginia Randolph, that is listed here. I believe that this is definitely our first year for this program, but this is something that teachers have always asked for. They've asked for opportunities to expand their learning and to get the credit courses that they need to be the professionals that they want to become. Also, we give them supports in the school division by creating specific spaces for the demographics that are represented in our teacher and staff population, and that's through our educator resource groups. Another event that we have is our Newcomer outreach event, and this is very important to me because I'm one of the people that's been working really hard with on this, along with Leslie Brown and Suja Amir, who she is amazing. She's a community advocate who is now on board with us as a Newcomer student and community coordinator. These programs, these events are geared directly to newcomer families, to immigrant families, to refugee families, and we're trying to provide them resources through the school division that they might need. So we actually have this coming Saturday, our first event for the school year, and it's a job fair, career readiness awareness, and a school readiness event. If you see the flyer here or visit our website, our EDO website on the Henrico County Public Schools page, you'll see more details on how to get involved and how to share that information before this Saturday's event. So getting into why we're here tonight, like I mentioned earlier, this is our first virtual event for the Cultural Heritage Month series. We do have our in-person event that's going to come next month on October 12th, and that one is our wellness portion. So we're really focusing on mental health and wellness. So what we did is we partnered with the Sacred Heart Folklorico program. It's a dance group that's organized by Tanya Gonzalez from the Sacred Heart Center. The folklorico, baile folklorico, if you're not familiar with it, it's a cultural dance. There's a lot of history, a lot of tradition that goes into it, specifically in the Mexican culture. She'll be hosting a dance clinic that's going to be open to middle school and high school students, and that will be at Henrico High School on October 12th at 6 p.m. We're really excited. We want as many of our students to come out to try something different and to learn about this specific style of dance. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go into our presentation. Like I said, we're focusing tonight on the mental health portion, how we can support our Hispanic and Latin families in improving and taking care of their mental health. Just to give a quick overview, this is actually some facts that are posted on the Henrico County Public School website. You'll notice that of the student diversity, the Hispanic population represents 11.7% of our whole student population. So it is growing. I will say that every year it does get larger and larger. And within the Hispanic Latinx population, I want to make sure that people understand that's not just one group in itself. It is not a monolith. There are a variety of Hispanic Latinx students in that population itself. A bigger scope in the county itself, we have about 6.6%, and that has actually grown. And I do want to mention this data is coming from the Census Bureau, which if you all might have heard, there was a little bit of difficulties getting a really good count over the last couple of years because of the COVID pandemic. So we can assume, I would say that safely, this might even be even bigger. And overall, if you look at all of Virginia, we make about 11% of the population. And again, the news has reported that this is a big constantly growing population. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our first presenter, and that is Wendy Bundy. She is a youth and young adult coordinator from NAMI, Virginia, the National Alliance of Mental Health. Wendy, go ahead.
Thanks, Deanna. Just to give you a little bit more about what I do in my role, I'm the Youth and Young Adult Coordinator, as Deanna said, at NAMI, Virginia, which means I oversee our NAMI signature and non-signature programs serving youth and young adults. They include NAMI on Campus, NAMI Ending the Silence, the Youth Move Virginia Advisory Board, which Maria, who's also joining us tonight, is a member of, Youth Move Youth Groups, and Say It Out Loud. Next slide, please. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with NAMI Virginia, we're the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we were created in 1984 to provide support, education, and advocacy for individuals and families in Virginia who've been affected by mental health conditions. Along with our community-based affiliates, we provide the education, support, information, training, and resources, and engage in systems change policy advocacy. We're situated in Richmond, which is really close to the state legislature. We are a 3-tiered organization, meaning that we have NAMI National that supports efforts nationwide, and then we have us at the state level where I work, and we have local NAMI affiliates throughout the state. NAMI Central Virginia is your local affiliate for Henrico County, and I'll also share a little bit more info about them shortly. And so why does NAMI exist? Basically, we're here to improve the lives impacted by mental health challenges and conditions. And that's through that advocacy and education that I just talked about. We do everything through lived experience and peer support. So all of our programs are peer-led, or as close to peer-led as we can get, especially with some of the youth programs. We try to keep the age range very similar so that it feels very mutual and the understanding of you're not alone, because it is someone who has been through something like that recently. We have this short video on empathy versus sympathy, which for the sake of time, we're not going to watch tonight, but it's by Brene Brown, and it's in a lot of our programming. So I highly recommend checking that out if you have a chance. So what is NAMI again? We're made up of families, individuals, professionals, and supporters. We promote the mental health recovery through support, education, and advocacy. We believe that everyone deserves the opportunity for recovery, and we envision a world free of stigma and discrimination where people impacted by mental health conditions get the help, hope, and support that they need. Next slide, please. So I also mentioned that I oversee the Youth Move Virginia initiative, and we have, as part of that, we have the Youth Advisory Board, which is comprised of 15 young people from all over the state who have lived experience or connection to mental health in some way. Maria, who is on the call with us, she is a member of that board, and I wanted to give her some space to talk about her experiences with us and what being on that board means to her.
Thank you, Wendy. So hi, everyone. I'm a Guatemalan-American young adult, and I'm a member of the Youth Move Virginia Advisory Board. I joined the board in June of this year after I completed something called the Resilience workshop that the organization offered. Since joining the board, I've participated in regular meetings. I've actually now been trained to be a facilitator for future resilience workshop offerings. And I believe that as a disabled and neurodivergent Latina, I bring a unique multicultural perspective to the organization. And so I'm able to contribute another thought approach to the diversity of ideas. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Wendy for the upcoming walk we'll be having a presence at. And so it'll be October 8th, actually in Richmond. And I've helped plan for the Youth Move presence at the NAMI walk next month.
Thank you, Maria. That was a great summary. Yeah, Maria has been super engaged since I took this role, and I'm very thankful to her and everything that she does with us as a volunteer. And so with that, how can you stay engaged and informed on what we have going on? We have our NAMI Virginia helpline, which is on the screen, the 188 number. We also have our website and then the link through our website where you can join our e-newsletter. And there is one specific to youth and young adults that you can join that I send out monthly with everything that we have coming up. So I mentioned your local NAMI affiliate is going to be NAMI Central Virginia. They are also located in Richmond. And this is all of their contact information. Again, they serve the Richmond metro area and greater Petersburg area. And they also have a crisis line that they support, as well as their information line and regular phone number. And some of their programming that they currently have going on are support groups, including one for young adults ages 18 to 30. And they also offer the Ending the Silence presentations for schools. Next slide, please. We at NAMI Virginia also do a lot of online programming that started during COVID, and we've seen how well people have taken to it, so we plan to continue it. There's a lot of online support groups that are all free, peer-led, opportunities to connect with families and meet peers that share similar conditions and have been through similar experiences, so you can share resources and kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And for more information on those, you can visit the main section of our website. And for the youth and young adult specific ones, I've included the link here as well. I do want to plug that we have our Youth Move group starting back up this week. It's for ages 14 to 25. We're going to be discussing a wide variety of topics and also have some fun and engaging online activities. It is led by the Youth Move Virginia staff, which is myself, as well as some of our volunteers that are on the advisory board that are young adults. And that'll be on Friday from 5:30 to 7:30, and you can find the registration through the link that's on this slide. Next slide, please. This is a program that I'm really excited about that's coming soon. It's called NAMI Sharing Hope. And I'm going to let Maria take over and read this slide and tell you a little bit more about it.
Thank you. So Compartiendo Esperanza is a mental wellness initiative for the Latinx and Hispanic community. They have found through a lot of research and firsthand communication that there's really not enough information surrounding mental health issues, and this can keep the community from getting the support and the help that they need. And so what they've done is they've created a 3-part video series to explore the journey of mental wellness through dialogue, through storytelling, and through a discussion, a guided discussion. So the first topic is on youth and mental wellness, and it's called Healing Together, Sanando Juntos. The second is for community leaders and mental wellness as the focus, and it's the roots of our healing, las raíces de nuestra sanación. And lastly is on Latinx families and mental wellness, and that's La Mesa for the table. So the video trailers are available on the NAMI website.
Thank you, Maria. And then I want to end with my contact info. If you have any questions after this presentation, don't hesitate to reach out. Email is always best. I'm only in the office certain days of the week, so sometimes we can play phone tag, but email I check every day. So reach out with any questions that you have, and I'll be happy to answer those. And of course, thank you to Deanna and her team for inviting us to be a part of this. We really enjoy getting out and doing things with the community like this as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Wendy and Maria. There are so many ideas in my mind for collaboration that are coming in right now, and I'm sure there are other people watching right now that are probably thinking about some really great ideas as well. Before we move on, are there any quick questions that anybody might have for Wendy or Maria before we move forward? All right. If there are, just go ahead and put them in the chat as they come to you, and then we'll share them at the end as well. Great. These are some of the links. I want to make sure I don't skip over any of your information. These were some of the links that Wendy mentioned about volunteer opportunities. We'll make sure to put this information on the event website for you, Wendy. Did you want to speak about any of these or?
The only thing I will highlight with volunteer opportunities is, especially with the new program that we have coming out, Sharing Hope, we're always looking for Spanish-speaking volunteers. And of course, we would love to offer our other programming in Spanish as well. So if you're interested in some of the programs or any of this strikes a chord with you and you want to learn more about it, certainly reach out because we would love to build up our workforce of volunteers that are Spanish-speaking. Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll definitely make sure to put that on our website and share it out with all of our division staff. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and move forward, and I'd like to introduce quickly the members of La Esperanza Research Program. They're going to give a fuller, more robust introduction of themselves, but leading this team is Dr. Oswaldo Moreno, and also present today that's going to be sharing some information about their program is Giovanni Munoz, a Ph.D. student in the program, and Isis Garcia Rodriguez as well. Dr. Moreno, if you want to jump in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us here, Diana. Gracias a todos los que se están conectando. First, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Primeramente, gracias y felicidades a todos por el mes de la Hispanidad. My name is Dr. Oswaldo Moreno. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at Virginia Commonwealth University. I've been in Richmond, Virginia since 2017. And since then, we began to shape and form a research program, a research laboratory, where we pretty much examine the cultural and contextual and lived experiences of Latin immigrant communities in these areas. And within that, it just began to grow where we expanded with our through mentorship, through research, through ways to be able to have more mental health services within our Latino Spanish-speaking communities in the area. So I have two of my students that are going to be able to talk a little bit more about themselves and the work that they do and just their experiences of being in La Esperanza and in Richmond working within these communities. But if you can give me the next slide, just a little bit of a background on La Esperanza. La Esperanza Research Program here at VCU is directed by myself and really works with other faculty that, from here in the Department of Psychology, as well as other faculty that identify as Spanish-speaking Latin A. And it aims to include doctoral students, it includes undergraduate students, and research support staff to the understanding of cultural and contextual approaches to understanding overall health, mental health, healthcare behaviors, as well as the disparities and inequalities that our communities may be confronted with. La Esperanza taps into the areas of ethnic minority psychology, Latinx psychology, psychology of religion, as well as utilizes aspects of clinical psychology, counseling psychology, social work, anything that's related to more health care as well as social determinants. And we use multiple methods to be able to inform what's going on in our communities and how we can better translate that for the better being of our community. One of the things that we like to do within La Esperanza is also look at the mental health of our communities, not just through the risk and mental health as a pathology, but also looking at the positive aspects of mental health. And when what you may be saying, what does he mean by the positive aspects of mental health? Well, when I talk about that, I'm pretty much talking about the state of well-being where individuals realize their inner potential, where they are proactive and productive, and it's flourishing, belonging. And so it's not just looking at like depression within the Latino community or anxiety or any mental health, but also looking at it from the other lens of the positive aspects of the mental health, of how we see our community flourishing, how we acknowledge it, how we celebrate with it, and understand how they do that and how we can engage that in therapy, how we can engage them more in the community. Part of that is through a strength-based approach, really looking at what are the strengths of our community, not just looking at a community as a vulnerable community, not just looking at the community as, again, looking at with a lot of risks and mental health or adverse mental health, but more as of the positive aspects. So that's one of the things that we tend to tap into, really looking at how the Latina values, how our cultural values, how that shapes our mental health, how our family, how even aspects of uh, policy, how policy shapes it, how our community, for some, how religion, spirituality shapes all these forms of lived experiences, as well as mental health, not just on the adverse side, but again, on the positive aspect. So we tap into three main areas in our analyses. That one of them is really to understand the treatment-seeking behaviors. The second is really understanding the contextual and cultural factors that really impact mental health. And again, mental health, thinking of it as adverse, but also positive, and understanding Latinx healthcare and health disparities in the United States. So the first one, we quite a few of our work is really to understand what gets our community into these services. What helps, what shapes, what are the facilitators that's going to help our community get to, for example, a provider or a doctor or a therapist or a social worker? What are the nuances that is going to carry them? What are the factors that will lead them to facilitate to get there, as well as what are some of the barriers? And the goal is to be able to reduce the barriers and to be able to increase the facilitators that would help them engage in treatment-seeking behaviors. And well, it's not just looking at treatment-seeking behaviors from a professional Western lens, but really understanding what are the treatment-seeking behaviors of our Latino community here in Virginia. Perhaps it's going to a church, perhaps it's looking more at informal practices such as family, social support. Perhaps it's even looking more at traditional means of healing. And so really being able to inform what our community does and how it really helps with the overall mental health. And again, when we think about the community, we're thinking about adults, we're thinking about families, and we're thinking about children as well. And then the second one is understanding how all these factors are going to impact health and mental health. Whether it could be at the individual level, it could be in the schools, it could be in the family, it could be in their neighborhoods, it could also be in the systemic policies. One of the we've been working a lot recently with around the anti-immigrant rhetoric that we were seeing, the anti-Latinx rhetoric that we were seeing at the federal level, nationally, and how that was impacting our communities, how that was impacting our students, how that was impacting when they would see that there was a lot of anti-immigrant, anti-Latinx rhetoric being displayed with politicians, news, and so forth, and how did that shape mental health? So really looking at these contextual nuances across these different levels. And the third is really aiming to reduce these mental health care disparities. And when I talk about the disparity, is when we know that there is risks involved and there's increased symptomatology, but we don't have enough services that match that. Perhaps there's an increase, but there is less services. One of the things that our work has been finding is that, as we all know, the Latinx community is blowing up in Virginia, which is amazing. It's growing. However, the healthcare services are not catching up with it. So that starts creating a healthcare disparity. So our goal is to reduce the symptomatology and to be able to increase services, whether it's through healthcare service, whether it's through social services, whether it may be even just programming in the community to be able to reduce the symptomatology, but also increase resources for them. And so that is what we do. We work a lot with folks in the community, if you can give me the next slide, for the past 5 years, we've been working a lot with, for example, Sacred Heart Center, Sagrado Corazón, recently building partnership with Casa de la Salud. We really are open, and we really want to be able to grow more within the communities as well as within the school districts in regard to how can we help our community? How can we utilize our research skills? How can we utilize our tools to be able to analyze, to be able to program, to evaluate programs that better shape our Latinx communities? So our key people here, I would say, are encompassed in 4 different areas. It would be myself, who's the director of this La Esperanza, but we also have a lot of doctoral students that we're recruiting from across the country that are coming here. We'll be here for about 5 to 6 years. Will come in with at minimum a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and 5 to 6 years later, we will leave. They will leave graduated as a doctor as well in counseling psychology. The beautiful thing about being in a counseling psychology program is that we're also training culturally sensitive, culturally relevant, culturally humble Latinx Spanish-speaking bilingual providers that will be psychologists in the community. So that is another way that we're reducing this, these disparities. Our students are also trained to be mental health professionals. We have a clinic, La Clínica de Salud Mental, through VCU. Happy to talk a little bit more about that. Our students are trained through there. So that is another way that they themselves will be able to provide mental health services within our communities. Our students go out into the community. We'll be able to do some psychoeducation as well. And a lot of the research, again, is translational, that it's going to be for the community, to the community, by the community. And so again, it's this twofold. So right now we have about 5 doctoral students from across the country. They all identify as Latinx. They all identify from themselves or their parents coming from a Latin American country, bilingual, and from different places of the country. Myself, I was born in Mexico. I was raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and now I'm here in Virginia working within our Latinx communities. And our students have their stories as well, how their lived experience, as well as their skills that are gaining here, how they will be out in the community, serving the community, evaluating the community, as well as providing these mental health services. The goal, of course, would be to retain them, and then they themselves can continue to be in these areas working within our Latinx community. So that's the doctoral students. Our research assistants are undergraduate students that are pursuing their bachelor's degrees, as well as post-bacs that they graduated with the bachelor's degrees. And their goal is to be able to go into doctoral programs, being able to, or grad school, to be able to be providers in our community. So our goal is to get them out there, and hopefully as well to retain them. A lot of these students tend to be from the Northern Virginia area, and so and here in the Richmond area. And so our goal is to be able to have them out, and then also give them some of the skills so they can be able to partake and be able to help these communities. And again, our community partners, we cannot do this work without our community partners. Right now we work with promotores, we work with a lot of after school programs, we work with, someone mentioned Tanya. Tanya absolutely plays a key role in the work that we do. So our lens is to be able to provide the services in these areas, to be able to evaluate, and to be able just to serve as liaisons with our skills that we have as researchers, as pretty much in translational and prevention, not just as intervention, but finding ways that we can prevent symptomatology, that we can prevent these disparities. And so I am also very fortunate to have 2 of my doctoral students here that they'll be able to talk a little bit about their background, their experiences, where they came from, why they do this work, and where they see themselves going, so you all can get an idea of what we do here in La Esperanza. So if you can give me the next slide. And our first one would be Isis Garcia Rodriguez. So Isis, feel free to take it away.
Hola, hola, everybody. My name is Isis Garcia Rodriguez. I am Guatemalteca and Indígena. My familia es de Guatemala. And I did my undergrad in Suffolk University in Boston and came down to Virginia to pursue graduate school in Dr. Moreno's La Esperanza research program. So I'm excited to be here and discuss a little bit about kind of what I'm interested in and why I'm interested in those things. And so my research interests probably have really focused on legal status and things like the anti-immigrant rhetoric that Dr. Moreno was speaking to, and just overall systemic factors, like thinking about things as social determinants of health, such as public policy, and particularly looking at family dynamics, parent-child relationships in mixed status families where maybe someone is undocumented like a parent, but the child themselves was born in the country, and then they are documented, and kind of how does that impact the relationship? And so a lot of why I'm interested in these things comes from my personal experience. And I am a first-generation college student. I am the first one in my entire family to be getting a doctoral degree. And so there's there were a lot of barriers that I had to face, and a lot of realizations that the research that I do is very much in line with the exact lived experience that I've had. And so that is where a lot of my passion for this work comes from. Additionally, being in a doctoral program like Dr. Moreno was speaking to, we have the opportunity to be clinicians. And so coming into this this place being VCU, it was really important to me to be able to have therapy with individuals who look like me, speak like me, where we can, code switch, where we can be bilingual in session, and they can feel at home in their therapeutic alliance. And that are the things that make me feel like a really good therapist at the end of the day. Regarding the research, I just really love being able to integrate all of that information. So, thinking about policy, clinical, and future science or research implications, those are the things that really drive a lot of the work that we do and the work that I do, because I want to make sure that what we're doing isn't just staying within the academic setting. That's a lot of what we see in science. And realistically, when we're talking about a community like the Latina community, which is huge and growing, and we love it, but we're not always giving that research back. We're not always showing how this research could really apply at a broader level, on a community level. And so a lot of what I really would love to see more is just seeing how much more this research could be given out to the community on a way that's understandable, that's clear, that has direction. And that's not always the easiest thing to do in academia. But we're here trying. And so that's a little bit about me. I don't want to speak too much, but I'm happy to, ask or answer questions. Some of the research that we've done here has been around DACA. My master's thesis was looking at how anxiety manifests in college students who have DACA. And so that's an area that I'm super interested in. And I'm happy to talk about that further with anyone who might be interested. So I will end there and pass it over to Gio.
Thank you, Isis. Before Gio jumps in, I would also like to add that a lot of the work that our students do and we train them in is providing the science piece, but really translating how that plays a role in our Latinx communities, especially within the social location that we're in here in the Richmond area and Virginia. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is also be able to disseminate as well as train and implement this, where we want to provide key recommendations. And so a lot of what we do is just that. I will also note that Isis played a key role in a 4-year study that we are in process of disseminating out into the community, into our field, on being able to culturally enhance some services for our Latinx youth to reduce substance use. So it's not just providing therapy per se or services, but also how can we culturally enhance it in a way that it's going to be more pertinent, relevant, real for our Latinx communities. And then the goal would be to then start implementing it, start training clinicians, and then start getting it out into our community. So thank you, Isiza. And now I open it up to Giovanni. Giovanni?
Hi, everyone. I'm Giovanni. You can call me Gio. I'm also Latino. My parents were originally from Mexico. My mom's from Michoacan, and my dad grew up in Guanajuato. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. So I traveled across the country to work with Dr. Moreno, Isis, and the rest of La Esperanza lab. My primary research focus I'm interested in reducing mental health disparities among the Latinx community, and also increasing the utilization of mental health services among the same community. I'm also interested in improving academic success among racial, ethnic minorities among the community. And my interest in this area of research kind of came into fruition by working actually within the school district back home. I worked as a behavior interventionist for about 6 years. And I noticed that a lot of the students I was working with really didn't have access to mental health services. And that became my motivation to kind of pursue a Ph.D. and hopefully utilize my research to influence policy to help folks around the country. As far as some of the research that I've been working on lately, I recently, been working on my thesis, my master's thesis, and that's involving substance use among the college student population at VCU. And I'm looking into how home disruption during the COVID-19 pandemic, family conflict, as well as stress is kind of influencing substance use among racial ethnic minority students at VCU. That's essentially it. I don't want to take time from the other folks here, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions when that time comes. And yeah.
Thank you, Giovanni. And I would also note that a lot of the themes that we see here, these are doctoral students, in this case, Isis and Giovanni, they're the stories, their lived experiences, not just here of two, but we also have, our team is quite large. We invite you to check out our website. And the beautiful thing about this is that a lot of us were those students that you're working with. Especially within the Henrico County. A lot of us were those students that we were translating for our parents. A lot of us were those students that were in ESL. A lot of us were those students, and now we really navigate this aspect of mentorship to be able to empower each other, and then to not just, I always use this example with my students. A lot of the times, like my mom and my dad, my mom being fifth grade education, my dad being a campesino in Phoenix, Arizona, my mom cleaning office and serving at the table, so I can one day being able to bring a voice to the table, being through policy, through my research, through being able to direct and now implement and so forth. And that's the goal of La Esperanza. One of the key models that we also use as well, and we navigate a lot, is we utilize any opportunity as a space to be able to advocate for our Latinx communities. If it's through our research, if it's through our presentations, if it's through spaces like this, we're going to use those opportunities to do just that. Two of my quotes that I hold true, and I would like to quickly read to you are these. If I can quickly pull it up, if you can give me a second. Give me one second. Give me one second.
Sure, not a problem, ma'am. While Dr. Moreno is pulling that text up, if anybody has any questions that they want to go ahead and put them in the chat right now, that'd be great, because in a minute we'll switch over to the Q&A of the presentation today.
Thank you. And the quotes that I hold true that we carry here in Esperanza is Dolores Huerta once said, every moment is an organizing opportunity, every person a potential activist, and every minute a chance to change the world. And so we hold true to that quote of Dolores Huerta in regards to really using every opportunity as an organizing opportunity, every person as a potential activist, and every minute, whether it's through our research, whether it's in the clinical room, whether it's through making an impact or just showing our representation, that we ourselves can also be in these spaces, etc. And the other one would be Toni Morrison once said, I tell my students, when you get these jobs that you have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. So we really want to use what we do here to be able to empower our community, to be able to empower the voice, and to be able to be that voice for our community. So thank you so much for having us. We're really open to collaborations with schools, with teachers, with community partners. If you ever need some aspect of program evaluators, if you need some perhaps research, one of our big trainings as well is to be able to obtain grants. We're more than happy if within the mission of doing this for our community, to the community, and by the community. So muchas gracias por tenernos aquí.
Gracias, Dr. Moreno. I am so excited. Estoy bien orgullosa. I'm very proud. It's as a Latina myself, a third generation Mexican American, and it is just very inspiring and exciting to see that not only is the population growing, but we have individuals from La Comunidad, from the community, doing work to make sure that these pathways to success and to a meaningful, sustainable, enjoyable life are doing the work right now for our students and for our families in the Virginia state and in the Richmond region and in Henrico County. So we're going to go ahead and move over to the panel discussion. There are so many questions, so I'm trying to summarize just down to a couple. But again, if anybody has any questions, either while they're watching the program or afterwards, you can email them to us, and we'll email them and share them over to the presenters, to the appropriate presenter that you identify that you'd like to talk to more. Especially if you want to get some of that information about volunteer opportunities with NAMI Virginia, or if you'd like to see some of the research work that is coming out of La Esperanza research program. So for the panel Q&A, I'm going to put a question out there, and the first couple are just going to be open to anybody who would like to respond, just a quick response. And then I have a last question for some of our, specifically for some of our presenters tonight. So the first question that has come to us, and we hear several of our educators and staff throughout the community mention, and it was even mentioned a couple of times in today's presentations, was combating the stigma and the prejudice. So some of us might know, some of us here might know that in the Latinx, the Hispanic community, there's a lot of stigma towards addressing mental health issues and receiving help or seeking help or asking questions. So what would be some recommendations that you could give our educators in Henrico County Public Schools that they can use, they can apply some tools, some way that they can spot the stigma, recognize it, and try to work with it in a way that it does give their students a space to speak about their concerns?
So I can jump in really quick. So I also teach psychology of the abnormal here at VCU. My classes tend to run between 200 to about 300 or so students. And one of the ways how we can combat the stigma is by being able to differentiate between a symptom and a syndrome. Many times our community will say, no, yo no tengo depresión. Yo no tengo, eso es para los locos. We've heard it. In it professionally, we've seen it clinically, we've seen it through research, and also in our communities. But one of the things that I always say is depression is a syndrome. However, if we focus on the symptom is the first thing that's presented to them. Perhaps it's sadness, perhaps it's losing an interest and inability. And our job and our goal is to be able to assist the symptom, not to focus on the syndrome. We don't have to call it depression. We don't have to call it these things, but what we want to focus on is perhaps on the things that's getting perhaps the symptom that's being presented. It's the same thing like when we go to the doctor because we have the flu, right? Our focal point is not the flu. Perhaps our focal point is to be able to reduce the fever, to be able to stop our cough. So one of the things that I would encourage everyone, educators, community, to be able to be, why don't we just focus on the symptom and not on the syndrome? Because the syndrome, many times, that's where the stigma is, not the symptom, because we all want the symptom to diminish. So we always say, well, whatever the community wants to call it, we'll call it that. We don't have to call it depression. It could just be un malestar. It could just be whatever the community is calling it. But at the end of the day, our focal point is symptomatology, not syndromatology.
I also would love to add that as a therapist, and maybe speaks a little bit to Tiffany's question in the chat, but that when we show up as therapists or just even in families, that we're normalizing the conversations around mental health. And as a clinician with Latino clients, just me showing up as a person, right? Like I'm a person first before I'm a clinician. And so showing up and being my authentic self and being vulnerable with clients and speaking to them as I would my own family is really important when working with this community, because, you know, things like confianza, familismo, they are at the root of our cultura and our community. And so when you are really engaging in those cultural values, you're really reaching the person. And so just showing up and being authentic, I think really can minimize some of that stigma so that they can see like, this isn't someone who's judging me, this is someone who understands me. And that really opens up the space for additional vulnerability. And even if there is stigma, to like, let's talk about it, right? Like, why do you feel that way? Like, let's break that down. You don't have to feel that way, and really work to empower the clients or just the community as a whole.
I will say I agree. You know, I do, from my own personal experience, I have heard members of the community, like you said, Dr. Moreno, say, I don't have depression, stress isn't real. I think it's like you were saying, they don't really have the language to talk about it and to identify it. Maria, I see that you turned your camera on. Did you want to respond to the question as well?
Yeah, just briefly, there is a program from NAMI called Ending the Silence. It's a free 50-minute presentation. It's now available in Spanish. There's also a version for parents and for school staff that can be really great. And then from my personal perspective, what I would say is like, believe in students. I think that's like really important.
Definitely.
Can I jump in really quick? Building off of what Maria is saying, we also have to remember that we hold a position, right? Our positionality matters. But at the end of the day, our students, they also hold a position, and they're also experts of their experience. So we also have to remember that our community is also the expert. Why? Because they are the ones that are living through this. So even if perhaps the language does not match, that's okay. They're still the expert. So we ourselves can also be the student and learn from the community, learning from the student, and allowing them to what Isis was saying, being the human side, but also connecting and learning that they also are holding truth to that experience. And just sitting with that, if it's that language, by all means, there's no reason why we have to fight to see or to assimilate them into our language. So that's part of the cultural humility that we talk a lot about in therapy.
Right. I do like that term a lot. I know you mentioned it earlier. It really stood out to me, that cultural humility. And like you said, not forcing them to assimilate and use the terms that we're used to here in the United States, but recognizing how they define it or how they call it, like the different groups of students. So how is it? What are those symptoms called? What are those names that they're given, right? So we've got to build that inventory, that language for ourselves as educators as well.
Diana, and the last thing that I would say on that is the difference between the cultural competence and cultural humility, because many times we'll say, oh, we're being culturally competent, and we're holding like we're competent, we reached it, we know it all. No, we don't. The difference is cultural humility is we're going to be humble on this, and we still have an opportunity to continue to grow even in our journey. So that's the difference between being, for example, culturally competent, saying, I know it all, I am the expert. Now, man, we are culturally humble, where we are always the student.
I love your passion. I can see as an educator that passion. No, and you were definitely right. Being an educator for life means being a learner as well. You can't continue being the best educator if you're not willing to learn from those that you're educating. So let me jump over to our next question. I noticed that a lot of everyone today was presenting and sharing about their own context, their own experience, and there are several of you that are first generation Latinos, and that is really good. We have a lot of newcomer families here in the Henrico area in the Richmond region. This question specifically is, what about the mental health issues that you notice in those students that are born and raised here, our second, third generation students that are here? What are some of the things that you're noticing in that group of the population, and what can we as educators do to support them?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to some of the research that NAMI has done. It's really interesting because trauma and stress, they're already common for first generation individuals, but children born in the US to immigrants actually have even higher rates of mental health conditions than their parents. So it's a paradox because, you know, you'd think that maybe they would have less or something different, but there is maybe generational trauma in the family, differing cultural beliefs, and they maybe kind of in a family may not be seeking mental care at all. So the mental health providers may not have the education when they do finally find someone to even be able to advocate for that family or for that individual. Not every individual will disclose their family status or disclose, you know, what their background is. So, you know, it makes kind of a difficult position for the providers as well.
That resonates. I can hear students that talk about going to visit family back home and then coming back to the States. That's a lot of stress as well and trauma. And then just also, like you were saying, the cultural differences, you're kind of battling and trying to blend them, mix them. You're trying to pick and choose to make your identity, which I can imagine would be difficult for our students.
I also think that, so, you know, what we refer to as like the immigrant health paradox, where the later generations are not as physically healthy as newcomers. We see that a lot, but things like kiddos and young adults and adolescents engaging with social media and with that identity development, we're seeing a lot of I call them kiddos, but a lot of kiddos questioning, you know, their Latinidad, their connection to the culture, because maybe they don't speak Spanish, or they don't know how, or they don't know how to read in Spanish, and all of these things. And those are the sort of things that really impact their self-esteem, or they want to connect with the community and they don't know necessarily how. And so I think that there's a lot of barriers to feeling embraced by one's culture, especially when we live in a country like the US. And given the rhetoric around our community and what that's looked like over the last few years, having a significant impact on how they feel about themselves, how they might feel about their family, how they might feel about their safety of their parents, that of their siblings. So there's a lot of pressure on these young people, and we don't always recognize that. And so a lot of it is really just holding space for those transitions and all of the confusion on top of just growing up and, you know, going through all of the changes that are included in development.
Yeah, I agree with EC's. I mean, I think working with some of like the freshmen that are coming into the clinic, a lot of these Latinx students, you know, seem to be pillars within their families, and they don't understand, or parents don't really understand the responsibility that some of these students hold. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on them. And not only does it influence how their mental health gets affected, but also like their academics. And I think educators should be aware of this, you know, especially working with some of these students.
One of the things as well that comes to my mind as I'm hearing Giovanni and Isis is Many times when our students, our Latinx students are assimilating or acculturating, we also have to remember that they're also being socialized at home by family or parents that perhaps are not. Many times the literature shows that the assimilation and the acculturation will happen in the school setting, but at home, they perhaps may be living a different world that is a different culture. So one of the things that in the school setting would be able to create something like this, right? Like Hispanic Heritage Month, being able to bring it in, and especially within like the state of Virginia, where it's not like a border state that you see a lot of La Latinidad out there. So because if not, then we like to call that the acculturation dissonance, or the gap between the youth and or the student and the parent, which could then lead to potential greater adverse outcomes.
Well, I hope that that's what one of our goals that we're trying to do with our in-person events is definitely kind of bring to the schools that feeling of comfort and safety that students feel at home, like bringing that same environment, that atmosphere that they feel at home. So hopefully when we see you all at our October 12th event, our in-person event, you'll see that some of our students might pick up some of that feeling. And let me go ahead and move on to our last question for tonight. So I'm, as an educator and as educators on here, you know that we're always thinking of like, how can we move this work forward? How can we pass it on to future generations? I really love that both programs, both NAMI Virginia and La Esperanza Research Program, has very specific goals for advancing the work through the youth and through new leaders. So for our students, our PhD students that are on right now, and for our Youth Virginia student, Maria, what are some recommendations that you would give our Hispanic Latinx students that might watch this, that are watching tonight or going to be watching later on? What would you give, what kind of advice would you give them if they're interested in this type of work, if they're interested in volunteering, or just exploring this specific field around mental health?
I think for me, one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to some of the students is be curious, ask questions, and don't feel free to reach out. Especially as people have, or the students in high school who are transitioning to college. Go to your professors and seek out opportunities on how to benefit your community, and then and how to benefit your education. That's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give to some of these students.
I think the key there is definitely being open to education, being open to learning about mental health topics, being open to pursuing mental health treatment themselves, if applicable, if that's something that makes sense for them. For me, I participated in the NAMI support groups in Northern Virginia and in Central Virginia because they were on Zoom. And then I joined the Central Virginia. They have like a meetup.com website, and I found out about the Youth Move events that way. I participated in a peer-to-peer educational class, and then it was kind of like I wanted to give back to that community. I wanted to give back to where I'd gotten some resources and information and support from as well.
I think for me, the biggest message is really, again, about that authenticity of, don't carry your culture with you if that's what feels relevant for you, be uplifted and supported by who you are, and don't leave that behind, because that is what, yes, in a corny way makes you unique, but it also gives you so many strengths. And those are the things that I hold so close to my heart. My bilingualism is one of my biggest gifts, and also one of the skills that I'm able to utilize the most, and makes me a really worthy applicant across spaces. So there's a lot of things that come naturally to us that are actually really amazing skills. And also just recognize that maybe vas a ser el primero, pero no el último. You might be the first, but not the last. And so much of it is look for people who look like you, look for people who talk like you, and just hold on to them, whether it be informal mentorship or just a close friendship or relationship, and just know that if you find one of us, like if you are interested in talking to me or Gio or someone like Maria or Dr. Moreno, that we are happy to talk to you and lift you up, because like we are a comunidad and we don't let each other fall, you know, like we will lift you up. And so just, you know, search for what you need. And like Gio said, ask questions.
I really like that when you said carry your culture with you. It is a gift that we take into all of the spaces that we go into, and it has such amazing value that not only do we share with those in our home, but we share with everybody around us that we encounter in our life journey. Thank you so much. So I want to thank all of our presenters. Wendy had to log off a little bit early, but we want to make sure we give her thanks to Maria from Nami, Virginia, and to Dr. Moreno and his group of graduate students, Isis and Giovanni. Thank you so much. We are definitely going to be staying in communication and getting some of that research. I'm very interested. I want to hear about more of your work and even potentially use it and share it out with more of our educators in some of our presentations. I know there's a wealth of information that we can share. And with NAMI, we'll make sure that we put all of your information for volunteer opportunities, for the services that were mentioned earlier, that we share that on our website too, so that families and students can utilize those resources and that our educators can share them with their families and students. For anybody that wants more information about the Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity Office in Henrico County Public Schools, our website is linked here, and you can also follow us for more information about our upcoming events for the Cultural Heritage Month series on all of our social media platforms. With that, I thank everybody tonight. Have a great evening and move forward with sharing your gifts.
Thank you.
Thank you.